Hi, welcome to You, Me and Mediumship. Tonight I'm just going to briefly touch on the question that I've been asked really was, how did I get involved in mediumship? I don't want to bore you to tears, and hopefully you won't nod off while you're listening to this, but I'll just run through very quickly how it happened for me, just to give you some idea how it all happened, I guess. So I was a farmer's son, so I was always brought up in the country, which I loved, and obviously that closeness with nature, and maybe something you probably wouldn't do nowadays, but probably from, I don't know, the age of 4 or 5, I guess, I'd be wandering off into woods and things like that. Probably puts parents' hearts in their mouths thinking that, but I guess we literally was in the middle of nowhere, but I loved it. And I think if I'd been probably shut in the house all day, I would have probably lost the plot, I think. I just love being out in nature. And there was a kind of attunement with it. Even at that age, I can remember feeling at peace with nature. Everything about it, I just loved. I simply adored being in the woods, out in the fields. I just loved it. The very first experience, I guess it's not necessarily for me, but I can remember the cottage that we lived in. I can remember Dad, who passed away. He was only 47 when he passed away, but I can remember him coming down the stairs in the middle of the night, armed with a stick or something, because we literally did have things moving around in the house in the middle of the night, and don't matter how many times he heard it and how many times he went downstairs and there was nobody there, he still continued to do so, and I guess just to protect us all. So it kind of started then. I had no idea at that age whatsoever about spirits, energy, ghosts, you name it. I had absolutely no idea. It was never talked about, never mentioned. We weren't that religious really as a family. Obviously we went to the weddings and blessings, the christenings, things like that we attended, but it was something that wasn't ever kind of rammed down our throat. I never went to Sunday school or anything like that, mainly because of where we lived in the middle of a field. So it was a lot of travelling, I guess, to get us to things like that. But anyway, I can remember seeing things out in nature, being aware of, I guess, that energy. You'd probably call it talk to yourself. So you'd probably think, maybe I should have been locked away, but it isn't. It's a kind of conversation with nature. It's a kind of allowing it to flow through you and within you, and it's being part of it. So it's very difficult to explain, but it's knowing that you are part of something else, part of a bigger picture, if you like. So basically, because of where we lived, it was very difficult to mix with people, and I had family around me, cousin just up the road and things like that. So we tended to play football and do things like that. I used to do fishing and all sorts of different things. So it's a different way of life, I guess. But I'm so grateful for that, because I think it helped me an awful lot with that ability of listening within self, because it's very easy, I guess, at a young age, and especially in towns and cities where you just go with the flow of what's happening. There's not a lot of self-time, if you like. So I was quite lucky with that. My first image of a spirit was, we moved from one cottage to a new house that was built on the grounds of an old cottage. Again, middle of a field, and I loved it. Great woods, lovely woods nearby, where I used to spend an awful lot of time in there and take my dogs down for walks, and I enjoyed that. But I can remember waking up one evening wanting the loo as you do, and went to the toilet as I normally did. No problem there. And as I just about to walk into the toilet itself, on the landing of the stairs stood a young man. I would say now, thinking back, probably early 20s, something like that. I remember he had what we call boiler suits, so it's kind of a boiler suit on. He stood on the landing, and I knew immediately that he was spirit. But like I said, nothing had ever been explained to me about ghost spirits or anything like that. I had absolutely no inclination as to what this was all about. But I knew that he had passed. I knew that he must have lived in the house that was demolished to build our house. And I had no fear of him whatsoever. I just looked, he looked at me, and I went to the toilet and went to bed. Thought nothing of it. It's odd because I don't remember mentioning that to my parents or even my sister or anybody. I just remember thinking it was just like an ordinary thing that happened every day of the week, I think. But I can also remember a cat that I used to look after, and it was a wild cat, and it used to follow me everywhere around the farm and down the woods. It'd come with me, just followed me everywhere. I would give it a little bit of food. And there was a number of cats like that where we were. I think at one point, we were well into probably a dozen cats that just appeared from nowhere. And they all used to sleep in a barn across the road. It was like a cow barn where all the cows used to go in and sleep. And the cats used to huddle up in a corner. And yeah. And there's one particular cat that followed me everywhere, was obviously very special to me. And after a couple of weeks went past, I hadn't seen him, it wasn't unusual for a few days sometimes. Obviously he went off, did his own thing. And I think it was at least a couple of weeks went past and I hadn't seen him. And I remember waking up in the night I could hear something by the bed. And I turned over and looked down, and the cat was there. And I can remember thinking, oh, where have you been? And then I remembered that my mother did not like cats at all. And she would go mad. If a cat was in the house, she would not be happy. And I remember that panic, thinking, oh, I'm in trouble. And I thought, I've got to get this cat out of here somehow, out the window or something, or, I've got to do something, creep down with him and let him out the back door, or I've got to get the cat out of the house. So as I went down to reach to pick him up, my hand literally went straight through the cat. And I realised then, I thought, no, this is spirit, this is energy. I can remember I never knew the phrase of spirit, but I just knew that it was past. This energy had gone, it passed, and I just couldn't work it out, to be honest. He'd vanished. As I put my hand through him, he had just vanished. So the next morning, quite hesitant at asking my mum, just in case she had spotted the cat in the house. But then I thought maybe not, because he had passed, obviously. But I remember saying to her, have you seen the cat? I was kind of testing the waters, I guess. Have you seen the tabby cat that used to follow me around? And she looked at me for a few seconds. And she said, I didn't really want to tell you this, she said, because I know how much he meant to you. And I said, well, tell me what. I kind of knew what was coming. And she said, well, Dad picked him up off the road 2 weeks ago. He'd been run over and killed. So it kind of confirmed that, what I thought, he had passed. Obviously very sad, very upsetting, but I knew he had passed. But it was a knowing. You just have this knowing. And I'm sure there's many of you listening to this who experienced exactly the same thing as a child. I can remember spending a lot of time, probably from about 8 or 9 years old, questioning life. Not because I was necessarily unhappy with it, but I knew there was a purpose behind it. And I can remember, and I'm sure this is not normal in any way, shape, or form, but I can remember laying awake, knowing that there's purpose, but I was trying to work it out. So, obviously, never did, but I had an understanding, I had a knowing, I knew of energy, I experienced energy. I can remember one other thing that happened. It wasn't a nightmare. It was quite frightening, but it was. I know it was real. It was not a dream or a nightmare. I was being picked up in the sheets. I was all wrapped up in my bed, and actually being scooped up and lifted up, and just turned around in the room, and it was like somebody was just playing with me. In that respect, they were just like turning around, and then they gently placed me back in the bed. And I can remember looking, and there was just nothing, nobody in the room at all. And we lived in the country, so obviously it was quite dark, but there was like, I think I had an alarm clock or something, but I just, there was enough light to see around in the room that there was nobody there. And I had other things happen. It's that there's, I guess, more like premonition things. I had no idea when things had happened or going to happen, and they did, that kind of thing. And one thing that sticks in my mind, and I think I've mentioned this before, where I got pulled up by the headmistress in primary school. And I went to the little boys' room, as little boys do. And I can remember there was, I forget I know his name was Stephen, that's all I remember. But there was an energy, it was an old building, a very old building, the school that I attended. And I can remember sensing this energy within the boys' loo. There was definitely an element of spirit in there. Wasn't frightened of it. They're not going to cause anybody any harm. It was just part of that building. It was in that room. And I quite innocently said to Stephen, oh, we have spirit within the room. We have energy in this room. It is an old building. Thought nothing of it until the next day when I got called in by the headmistress, because that morning Stephen had a little accident. Let's just say didn't make the little boy's room. Basically, because he didn't want to make the little boy's room, because I frightened him to death and he would not go back in there again. And I can remember I got called in and told off that I should not talk of spirits and ghosts and things and scare the other pupils. So from that day on, I didn't. But they're kind of what happened in the early days. I didn't read an awful lot about spiritualism or ghosts or spooks or anything like that. It was not part of what was our family life whatsoever. But we had things happen. Like I said, we've had things disappear and reappear in the house a number of times. My sister hung a necklace on the radiator when she had a shower. Literally come out the shower, it gone. And that was missing for quite a few weeks, I think. And then my dad used to bike to work, bike home. He biked home, went into the shed where he kept his bike, and he had a workbench in there, and very neatly laid out on his workbench was my sister's necklace. Nobody knew how that got there, who had put it there. And, things like that happened. So I guess got to like a teenager and done what teenagers do, played a lot of sport, played a lot of football, loved my football, and obviously you go to school, do all the exams, get a job, blah, blah, blah. So I started, I guess it's getting pulled into it in a sense. I became interested in what had happened in my childhood. I would question how I thought then. Why was I thinking? What is my purpose with this? Am I to use this? What's it all about? And I was in London, and I wasn't that keen, to be quite honest, on having a reading with this Indian man. Apparently he passed. He's passed now, but apparently he used to read for famous people in London, and I was lucky enough to get invited for a reading by somebody who was aware of him, didn't know him that well, but was aware of him, had made contact, gave him no information whatsoever about me. I took a bit of persuading to go, but I went in the end. And there's little things, it's funny how little things stick in your mind, but I remember walking up these stairs, going into this little room. There's a little round table, and he sat at the table as I walked in. And he looked at me, he goes, "Ah, you're a Pisces," which was correct. And I kind of looked for, must have a necklace on, or I must have something on that would give that away, but I hadn't got anything on me at all that would, it was a good guess. If that was a guess, that was a very good guess. So he sat down. He had some paper in front of him with a pen, and he shut his eyes, and off he went. And he was just drawing all these little symbols and things on this piece of paper. And every now and again he would start again. And then he came out of this like trance-like, just like a trance, I guess. He just popped out of it. And one thing that I always remember is he only had one eye. I was in early 20s, so I was a bit scared of him, really. It was a bit frightening, but a lovely man. And he went through into my past, which was unbelievably accurate, absolutely unbelievably accurate. I was gobsmacked. He went into my present yet again, was absolutely amazing. And then he stopped. And he goes, "I need someone to witness this." Of course, I was thinking, oh dear, no, this is hopefully not bad news or anything. And he went off, and he went and got my friend at the time, pulled them in. He goes, "I want you to listen to me, both of you." And you could see the fear in both our faces. I'll never forget it. And he looked at me. Now, please don't take this the wrong way. I'm being honest with how this happened. And he looked at me and he goes, "I am honoured to be sat here with you." And I thought, no, only early 20s. And I thought, what's he going on about? And he goes, "You have power." He said, "You will be successful with your power." Straight away, being in early 20s, a bit of an idiot, you know what it's like. And I thought, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich and famous. Wow, I said, "Well, thank you very much." He goes, no. He knew what I was thinking. He goes, no. He goes, "I'm saying no more." He said, "You will be a very powerful person. You are will be a very powerful man." He said, "And I am very honoured." So I walked out of there thinking, well, totally confused really, thinking, what on earth is he going on about? I mean, I'm a farmer's son, I'm not the brightest of people in the world, I've done okay. What does he mean? Just didn't get it. And I puzzled for years over that. And I often wondered whether it was just this he probably picked up from maybe my childhood, my association with energy around us, the fact that I'd seen spirit, not every day of the week, not as the norm, but I had a knowing of purpose. So I kind of linked the two together. So I looked into what this was all about. And when, obviously, you get married and had children and things, and I was in and out of it like it was never something that I did every day of the week or anything like that. But I guess I came to a point where I realised that if you just sat, and sometimes, you didn't get the chance with your young family, with a family, you didn't get a chance to do that, which is, fine. But when I could, I sat and I would start sensing, images of things that I needed to pass on to other people, which I did. And then as that grew, if someone asked for reading, I would give readings. And I've said this before, a lot of the time it was quite skeptical people. People would think, oh my God, where did that come from? And I said, well, I'm telling you, this is from your father. This is your father. And it kind of grew from there. Then, but you're in and out of it. That's the thing. Life gets in the way, and I understand a lot of people say, "Oh, it's difficult to sit every day," and of course it is. Yes, but you just do your best. That's all you can do. So, I kind of mingled in the right places where you are told to go. I was sat in circle. Experienced quite a lot in the circle, and I think it helps you in some ways. Wasn't an ideal circle for me, but it did help give a little bit of confidence, especially when you're asked to give a reading for every member of it on the spot. And then I did some tests for certain spiritual organisations on my mediumship. Was told by a chairman one night that you will be an unbelievable medium. That was early on. But I was not comfortable because of what I was seeing, from what I was hearing. I wasn't comfortable in that situation, and I thought, this doesn't feel right for me. So I kind of went off on my own, and I discovered that the more I sat, I learned. And it was important that I followed that path for me, that wasn't out of a book, it wasn't a course, I didn't attend courses. I learnt from spirit. And then as time went on, I realised how some elements of what I believed in and what I practiced were not done always in truth by, it just gone plastic. It had gone, I could see the commercialism behind it all. So I found that very upsetting. And it's sad in a way, because the quality wasn't there. It was a lot of psychic reading going on where it should have been connection with spirit. So when did I decide to go out there and just teach what I'd learnt from spirit? Not out of a book, not on a course, none of that happened. But this is just what I have been given. And that I decided probably the middle of last year. So I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to go out there and I'm just going to put out there what I've been taught. And that's where I am now. So there you go. A little bit of history behind me, and hopefully you didn't nod off. So I'm wishing you all the very best on your journeys, obviously. And I'm here to answer comments and things and any questions that you may have. And obviously I've got my Patreon going now as well. Have a great evening. Please like and please subscribe. This just keeps me going on this journey that I've decided to undertake, and I hope you enjoy the videos. I'm wishing you all the best. So have a lovely evening. Take care and bye for now.